Good morning, and thank you for joining us at our town hall focused on the 3 levy measures that we have on the ballot on February 8th. My name is John Holman, superintendent here in Lake Washington. I'm going to transition over to a slide deck where we have some information to share with you. There's a Q&A feature that you have at the top of your screen. If you have questions about the presentation, go ahead and enter those into the Q&A. My team is collecting those on the back end and will pass those along to me. At the end of the presentation, I'll go ahead and answer those questions, but I may also invite some of my team to provide additional details about those questions. So today I am sharing about 3 levy measures. Our levies, when we think about fiscal supports, are always in consideration of supports for our students, ensuring that all of our students have access to opportunities and excellence in education. When we think about our students, when we think about our work, it is always driven by our mission and our vision. Our mission of graduating each and every student in Lake Washington School District, but not just reaching that benchmark of graduation. It's about also providing them to be future ready, prepared for college, prepared for the global workplace, and prepared for personal success. We're the 2nd largest school district in the state of Washington, a very large school system, serving over 30,500 students each and every day in 57 schools across the region, regions of Juanita, cities of Kirkland, Redmond, Sammamish, and on average, our students graduate at a rate of 94% within 4 years. One of the things we're most proud of is our partnership with our community. Our community has a long history of financial support, supporting levies here in Lake Washington. We actually have over 10,000 approved volunteers that are anxiously awaiting that point in time where they can come into our schools and provide that support that we all know is beneficial to our students and student success. And when we ask our community, both our families and community members that don't have students in our schools, their level of satisfaction with the district, we continue to hear that there are high levels of satisfaction with the school district. As you're aware, over the last 3 years, all of us have been responding to the pandemic, be it in March 2020 when we had to close our schools and really understand what was this pandemic that we're going to be living with and how do we respond as an educational organization. Shifting then to the 2021 school year where we had to figure out what does remote learning look like to the degree so that we can continue our students' education using Microsoft Teams and implementing that across the system, ensuring that all of our students had a device that they could access their teaching and learning with. We were one of the first districts in Puget Sound to provide in-person learning for our most vulnerable students. And then in the spring, we were able to provide the most level of in-person learning for our students as they transition back in the spring to in-person learning. And then in 2021, this school year, we started with the majority of our students learning in person, but we also opened an online school to ensure that families and students that needed that environment had that as an option. We have about 1,200 students learning in the online school right now. Currently, as you may know, we're managing significant public health requirements, managing staffing shortages due to COVID-19, but we continue to strive towards excellence for all of our students. These 3 measures are in response to fiscal responsibilities across the school district, and we've identified specific program services that our students need. So it's important to understand, how do we think about the fiscal stewardship of these public resources? Something that we've paid attention to is our commitment to sound fiscal management and budget processes. We've actually been awarded what's called the Meritorious Budget Award 5 straight years. And what this really demonstrates is a commitment to that sound fiscal management, transparency in our communication, both publicly and in writing, but also how are we aligning our resources with what we're saying are our strategic goals and efforts. We consistently receive clean audits from the state, and then anytime we can save our taxpayers dollars, we go ahead and do that. Over the last 6 years, we've refinanced outstanding bonds, saving our taxpayers over $43 million. And all of this is aligned with the core values that we've stated in our strategic plan, our core values around students and their social emotional well-being and their health, knowing that that applies directly to their opportunities to learn, ensuring that we have high quality education for all of our students. We also know that our connection with our community is very important because excellent schools actually are part of excellent communities. And then for our results, knowing that our expectation around fiscal stewardship as well as our community's expectation. And so that transparency in school funding is very important to us. And so we have three measures on the ballot that I want to talk about today. First is the renewal of the Educational Programs and Operations Levy. Next is the renewal of our School Technology and Capital Projects Levy. And third is the Building Excellence Construction Levy. And what does the EP&O do? It truly does fill the gap between state funding and what our students need. The School Technology and Capital Projects Levy allows us to maintain our investments in both our technology and our schools maintenance and facility maintenance programs. And finally, the Building Excellence Construction Levy will allow us to add classroom space in critical places across the school district. First, I want to talk about the renewal of the EP&O levy. So why do we need this? Well, the EP&O levy is a replacement of the 2018 levy that actually expires at the end of 2022. And so what does it provide? It provides funding for important programs and operations that are either not funded or underfunded by the state. And so we all know that the state does provide some funding for what they have deemed as basic education, but it doesn't fully fund what our students need or really what any of us or our community expects for our students. And so the EP&O levy actually makes up 14% of our overall budget for things like school staff, opportunities for students, and early learning. And so as you can see here, this levy does fund essential staff that are not fully funded or are underfunded by the state. It also allows us to ensure that we can offer programs and services that we know that our students need. Additionally, this levy allows us to provide staff training to support our students. And when we think about our students and their experiences in our school, the EP&O levy ensures that students have opportunities for things like additional learning, such as at the high school level, a 7-period high school day that supports our graduation requirements, but it also allows us to provide activities for our students, such as music, the arts, athletics. And what we know about these opportunities is it actually allows our students to feel connected to their school and their school community. There's a direct relationship between that experience and connection that our students make and higher levels of success in the classroom. And finally, I want to talk about our early learning programs. This levy does provide funding for our early learning programs, and we're so proud that it's through inclusive settings for our students from all developmental backgrounds that students are participating in learning and growing as they develop kindergarten-ready skills. And our early learning programs aren't just about being prepared for kindergarten, it's actually being prepared and being placed on a trajectory that allows each of our early learners to graduate from Lake Washington School District prepared for their future. And so what are some of those gaps that I'm referring to between state funding and what our students and schools need? So let's just talk about a few of those. If you think about our school nurses, we do receive some funding from the state of Washington for school nurses, but the EP&O actually funds 71% of the overall program of school nurses, funds 33% of our counselors and mental health supports, those social emotional learning supports that we know are critical for our students. Thinking about our special education program, the EP&O provides 32% of the funding for that program. That's actually $21 million annually allocated to that program to ensure that our students that are qualified, that they have the appropriate levels of service so that they can achieve excellence for them. And then 71% of our gifted and talented program funded by the EP&O. And finally, those opportunities I was just referring to, the EP&O actually funds 100% of our athletics and extracurricular activities. The second measure is the renewal of the School Technology and Capital Projects Levy. And so why do we need this? Similar to the EP&O, this was a levy that was approved by voters in 2018. It expires at the end of 2022, and it provides funding for district technology and facility upgrades and maintenance. But it's also important to note that This levy actually funds 90% of the budget for our technology and facility upgrades programs. And so this levy does ensure that students have access to what we call 21st century skills, knowing that those skills will play a key role as we prepare students for the global workplace that they'll be entering after they graduate high school. This levy does provide technology for both our students and staff, as well as the necessary training for our staff, so that as they're applying these tools in the classroom, they're able to do that with success with students. And our technology systems have to accommodate the work of teaching and learning, but we also need to accommodate the work of running a large business. We employ 4,500 individuals here in the district. That requires a robust infrastructure and business technology systems, as we're always striving to work towards meeting our core mission of educating students here in the district. And then transitioning to think about our facilities. This levy allows us to maintain our investments in our schools and provides for the required facility upgrades and improvements that all of our schools and campuses need over time. And so here you can see on the left, this image shows you a roof replacement and HVAC equipment upgrade at Kirkland Middle School. It's these types of upgrades that allow our schools to maintain health and safety for our staff and our students, because we know there's a connection between healthy and safe environments and student success. And finally, our third measure, the Building Excellence Construction Levy, which will fund construction here in Lake Washington. And why do we need this? Well, the Building Excellence Construction Levy actually replaces expiring bonds while providing funding for critical construction projects to make sure our students have room to learn. And what does it provide? It provides funding for student classroom space at the elementary, middle, and high school level, as well as allocating funding to acquire property. I want to take a moment just to thank a team that spent quite a bit of time on the details of the needs across the district. It's our Facility Advisory Committee. They spent about 12 to 14 months analyzing data, our current situation, our projected data, to really make some recommendations around future facility needs here in Lake Washington in the short term and the long term. Myself, my team, the board of directors use these recommendations to develop the Building Excellence program, and this is the first step in that program. And so, as I'm sure you're aware of, as you're driving around our district and seeing rapid growth in both housing but also industry across the district, we are a fast-growing district, one of the fastest in the state of Washington and the fastest growing district in King County. Since 2008, we've grown by 7,300 students. That's a 25% increase in our student body since 2008. But we're not done growing, because projections show that by 2030, in the next 8 years, we're going to add another 3,500 students across the district. And what does this mean for us? This means that 83% of our schools within that 8-year window are going to be at or over capacity, meaning they don't have additional room to grow or provide the level of services that we all know and expect for our students. Some details about the projects. The Building Excellence Construction Levy will provide critical classroom space for over 2,300 students across the district. At the elementary level, a new elementary site on the Redmond Elementary campus, where we have some underdeveloped land that we can use for an elementary campus, because we know in the downtown area of Redmond, there is rapid growth, and we know that we'll need additional significantly more classrooms in that area. And so this will provide for 24 classrooms on that site for up to 550 students. At the middle school level, knowing that many of our middle schools are reaching their limits, but we've identified 3 places that are at a critical point and will need additional space. That's Finn Hill, Kirkland, and Redmond middle schools. Additions will be put on those schools to accommodate about 600 additional students across those 3 schools. And that at the high school level, you may be aware that our high schools are rapidly growing, with 2 of our high schools over 2,000, with Lake Washington High School on the verge of being at 2,000 in just the next few years. So we know we have additional space needs at the high school level. So the Building Excellence Construction Levy will provide a resource for about 1,200 student spaces across the district. Now, the location and design is still to be determined, whether those are additions at sites, whether those are smaller campuses such as our choice schools, but we know that we have space needs on both the east and the west side of the district. And as I said before, finally, this levy will provide for the acquisition of property for future schools. And in the spirit of transparency, we want to provide information about some of the costs related to these levies. It's important to note that these funding measures, if approved by voters, these resources stay within the community and directly benefit the students of Lake Washington. And so one of the things that we've always paid attention to is maintaining a stable tax rate for our community over time, knowing that there's always fluctuations, slightly up, slightly down with any tax rate. It should be noted on this slide that the total construction rate of $1.32 does include previously approved measures. And as we pay off old bonds, we're actually able to bring in new construction measures at that stable rate that I just talked about. So the Building Excellence Levy will have a rate of 52 cents per thousand of assessed value. The total combined rate, as you can see, is $2.84 compared to the current rate of $2.57. It's also important to note that districts only collect a set dollar amount for levies, and as our community grows, these costs are actually spread out amongst more property owners and businesses within the community. One of the other things that we know is that the state school tax rate will be declining by about 25 cents as we move forward. And then talking dollars and cents, as we think about a home assessed at $1 million, that homeowner will currently, or that homeowner does currently pay about $2,570 in Lake Washington School District levies and bonds. That same home with these three measures will pay $2,840. And one last set of data that I want to share with you, as we think about our tax rate and really being intentional about maintaining that stability for our community, looking at the districts that share a boundary with Lake Washington, you can see here, we actually have the lowest tax rate amongst those districts. If you were to look at the overall King County, you would see that Lake Washington is in that lowest quartile of districts, having one of the lowest tax rates in King County as well. So again, thank you for spending some time with us today. I'm going to go ahead and transition to a different window to be able to answer any of your questions. Just as a reminder, February 8th is when ballots are due. We know that ballots will hit mailboxes. I believe it's at the end of next week, and so please do remember to vote. All right, let me go ahead and pull up any questions that that my team has received. All right. So at this point, there's no questions that have come in. And so I know one of the questions that we often get is, how does the district determine how much to ask for or what measures to run? And so, it's important to know that this is a long process. That I mentioned our facility advisory committee before. We also know that it's our board of directors that ultimately approve these measures. And so we spent about 6 to 7 months analyzing data around each of the measures, the educational programs and operations, the technology and facilities capital projects levy, and determining what is the right measure in terms of our construction needs, knowing that we have additional construction needs beyond what is within the Building Excellence Levy, but knowing that at this point in time, this was critical. And so it was an effort in analyzing data, understanding the needs of our school district, listening to our community and our board, and ultimately making recommendations for these three measures. And so you can always go to our website for additional information or to ask a question if something does come up. That's lwsd.org. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a link to Levies 2022. At that link, you'll find additional information and resources. There's also a link on that page. If you have a question, go ahead and submit that and we'll get a response to you and most likely update our FAQ and website with that information as well. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful extended weekend. Thank you.